got to stand up to the horrific policies of Trump. He's never responsible for anything. It's always somebody else's fault. Lay off workers in America, shut down factories here, and move to poor countries around the world where people were making pennies an hour.
Let's hop into a CNN episode featuring Bernie Sanders and Kaitlan Collins, as I think it made for an all-around great segment debunking Trump and his failed second administration. So if you can, take a second, leave us a like on the video. It helps us out a ton, helps the video get out there, and we'll be back after with the much needed context.
We've got to stand up to the horrific policies of Trump. But in addition to that, we need a political movement which is going to stand with the working class of this country and take on the oligarchs and create an economy that works for all of us, not just Elon Musk and his friends.
So you're saying they don't have the breathing room that the White House seems to be saying, you got to give us a little
they
grace
don't.
here.
They really don't. And you know, it's a bit arrogant to say, well, kids may have a smaller number of toys and the price may go up a little bit. I think billionaires like Trump and Musk do not have a clue about what it means for a working class family trying to buy presents for the kids or to take care of the basic necessities of life. I think it's an incredible arrogance and ignorance on the part of these people who have so much wealth and so much money.
And to be clear, this is a tone from the administration that should piss off anyone, especially his voters, as he's essentially admitting that he lied to you guys to get your votes after promising for 2 years on the campaign trail that he would immediately, on day one, bring back a manufacturing boom. Joe, to be a dictator on day one, and it would fix all these issues. Families would have more money. Childcare would be more affordable. Housing prices would fall because, again, it's only because of bad Democratic policies that these are even an issue, to where he's now saying, yeah, sorry, because of my tariffs, your kids are going to have less toys. Because one, is a billionaire, he's so out of touch that he doesn't even understand what it means to middle-class parents to be able to fill the tree up for their kids and see that reaction and how their faces light up. But also because he has no solutions to this very issue and he knows it, his tariffs are a fail, and his last tax cuts were a $2 trillion expense that made wealth inequality far worse and only brought $6 billion additional investment each year, and actually saw a drop in business investment from where the rate was at. So that's not like a success, meaning it would take 330 years for it to pay off the debt it incurred.
He says President Biden is to blame for the last quarter of non-economic growth. It kind of went in reverse, and that he might be to blame for the current quarter. At what point do you think the president is responsible for GDP?
Never. He's never responsible for anything. It's always somebody else's fault. That's his modus operandi. He's always blaming somebody else and takes no responsibility for anything. I can tell you this.
Do you think if it was good, though, that he would take credit for it?
Of course, you got to take credit for what you do. And one of the things that's happening and what's rattling the entire global economy, not just our economy, is this arbitrary trade war that he has started, the arbitrary tariffs that he has imposed on countries all over the world.
To even kind of believe that this economic collapse is on Biden would show you're so far lost in the cult that it's almost pointless to try and explain it to you, but here I am anyway, because at that point you'd have to be convinced, one, that our economy was terrible or teetering recession just 100 days ago, when by all objective metrics, that's just not true. Even if you want to say prices were high, which they were, right? That doesn't mean economy bad. In fact, it was in the midst of the strongest bounce back from COVID of any country, with record market closings, overperforming job numbers, growing wages, dropping inflation, and a strong GDP. I would love to ask, if that's teetering on recession, then what would need to change to not be? But also, now under Trump, we've seen a negative quarter of growth in his first 100 days. This is tied to Liberation Day, where economic metrics were strong until then. Economists are now predicting recession as high as 90% likely. The idea that Biden had us in a spot that will take years for Trump to fix, and we need to give him time, and this is all on him, and even the next quarter, if it's bad, will be on Biden, and it'll be his recession. It's ignoring objective economic reality. It's almost frustrating to even try to have those conversations because of that.
Tariffs unto themselves are not necessarily bad. I helped lead the effort against permanent normal trade relations with China, that trade agreement, and with NAFTA, the Canadian-Mexican trade agreement, because those were agreements written by corporate America, and the goal was to allow corporations to lay off workers in America, shut down factories here, and move to poor countries around the world where people were making pennies an hour. So selective utilization of tariffs to protect American workers and American industry is a good thing. But that is very different than coming up with some crazy proposal based on nothing that anyone can understand, imposing arbitrary tariffs on virtually every country on earth. That is kind of off the charts.
And I don't know the ins and out of Bernie Sanders' position, but I might be a little less protectionist than he is, because I truly think that high imports drive innovative economies, producing the kind of jobs we want to see rather than protecting it for jobs that we probably should be trying to phase out. But I do think at the point that free trade is hurting both workers and the revenue base of taxation from these businesses, this is the niche in which tariffs can and should be applied. Let's say you have a new electric vehicle company, Clark's Electric Vehicles, starting in America, and we use entirely American sourced material. We don't ship from overseas, whatever. This causes our cars to be $2,000 more than what Tesla is currently selling their electric vehicles for. Tesla, however, is now regularly circumventing American labor for H-1B visa labor that they can get for cheaper, or they're moving their factories mass overseas for both cheaper labor and the tax haven of escaping our corporate taxation. This is a situation that I would say warrants tariffs that raise their prices for their electric vehicles, say $3,000, right? As it would then push the investment in consumer spending to the small American company. They're now the cheaper of the two options. My company, that is my American company. And then we can funnel that money down into expanding, creating more jobs while also adding to the tax base and growing our profits, having more money to tax. Trump, however, is doing none of this calculation, none of this precision, frankly, none of the strategy, where instead I literally think the extent in which he thinks of this is that tariffs make him feel like a strong man, tough guy, so he's going to do it to the countries to bully them.